Hello and welcome to 2-Day Rentals. I've been whipping and hacking and slashing my way through Dracula's Castle with the Castlevania games for as long as I can remember. I've played through most of them, not all of them, and I gotta say it would be really tough for me to try to rank which one is my favorite. I think I'll attempt to do that maybe later this year in October for a video, but you know, what's not to love about these games? Whether you're taking on classic creatures from Universal monster movies or Hammer horror movies or mythological creatures from literature, there's just a lot to love and a lot to unpack about these games. And I think the draw for me initially was just that, all the cool monsters that you get to fight and defeat. And I've seen the end of many of these games and I've conquered Dracula more times than I can remember. But I gotta say, the one that really stands out to me the most, and I think the one that's most influential, is the original one on the Nintendo Entertainment System. But I'll save ranking these games for another video, like I said. What I wanted to focus on today is the figures that I've accumulated to create my very own bestiary here at 2-Day Rentals. Simply put, a bestiary, if you don't know, is a collection of descriptions or representations of real or imaginary creatures. And boy, does Castlevania have plenty of those. And the reason this is even possible without going the route of fully customized figures are the figures that NECA released back in 2007. They did 5 of them, and I have 2 of those 5. I have Simon Belmont from the original Castlevania game on the Nintendo Entertainment System, and Dracula, which is the representation of Dracula from Symphony of the Night. They also did Alucard, as well as a succubus figure, and it's a real shame that they didn't do more figures. I think the other one that they did is an all translucent clear Simon Belmont, but there's so much they could pull from all these Castlevania games. And rumor has it, whether or not this is true or not, Konami wasn't quite happy the route that NECA took with these, and so they stopped production and there was a very limited release. So getting my hands on the 2 that I have really kind of kickstarted this whole process, and it's something that I've been wanting to do for a long time. First off, we'll take a quick look at Simon Belmont. Really cool figure, comes with great accessories. You got the candelabra, you've got the upgraded whip with the ball and chain, the boomerang, the invisible potion, the whip that's unfortunately broken. It's a pretty fragile piece, so I'll have to piece that back together. But a great representation of Simon Belmont, and if there was one Belmont that I would like to have, it would probably be this guy. The first game I played in this series was on the Nintendo. It's where I fell in love with this series. I wouldn't mind getting a Richter Belmont from Rondo of Blood. He's made appearance in other games too, but this one here is a really great one to have as your lone hero fighting all these monsters. Great figure, and definitely, I think, worth the asking price in my opinion. To cap off the 2 cornerstone pieces of Castlevania, we have Dracula here, and this is Dracula as we see him in Symphony of the Night, and I'm glad that they chose this version. I think it pulls away from the tropes and stereotypes that we see Dracula portrayed as so many times, and in the earlier games, playing it very much so on the nose. This gives you a different look for your Dracula, and they did 2 different versions of this figure. There's one with the mouth open, which comes with a bunch of different accessories, and of course this one here with the mouth closed, and I don't believe it had any other accessories with it, but it gives you room to add some other things to your collection. But really neat figure, and like I said, I'm glad that they chose to bring the Symphony of the Night version to figure form. Now this is where the fun part begins, because that's it as far as the NECA figures that I own, and probably all the ones that I'll get. And so here's where you can really take some liberties and pull from inspiration from all the different games. And that's really what I've done here. I've sort of taken the idea that these games represent all these different mythological creatures and classic monsters and made them my own. And there's plenty of room to grow. And I've had some help along the way. I'll give a shout out when that time comes around. But first, let's take a look at my representation of Frankenstein's monster. It's the McFarlane Frankenstein figure from the comics. I believe this came out a couple of years ago. Shout out to my brother. It was a birthday present from him. I got it last year, but it really works. I like how big this Frankenstein's monster figure is. He's got the Victorian garb on, and look, he stands out amongst the rest of the figures. He's big and bruising and bulking looking, and just a great representation of Frankenstein, and it fits really well. When it came to finding a werewolf that I was really looking for, I was struggling a little bit. And shout out to Inner Demons podcast about Ghost Rider. Definitely go check it out. They have great stuff. And they actually have their own Castlevania shelf that they put together with a lot of monsters and creatures. And he pointed me in the direction of creaturereplica.com. They do great stuff. And this is exactly what I was looking for. I love the torn clothes on the werewolf that you see after the transformation. I love the stand that it's on. The figure comes off and it's got a lot of articulation, but that stand really adds to the whole atmosphere of Castlevania. So a perfect fit, exactly what I was looking for. Thank you so much, Inner Demon. Like I said, go check out their stuff, and thank you so much for the recommendation. And one of my all-time favorite mythological creatures has to be Medusa, and as a kid I thought it was so cool fighting her early on in the game, and it's just great. This figure's by Mego. I couldn't ask for a better Medusa figure to go in with this sort of shelf of Castlevania stuff. She looks great, fits in perfectly, it's a great size. Have to have a Medusa, and I couldn't find a better one, I don't think, than this one. One of the oldest figures in my Castlevania bestiary is the Mummy, and this is a figure that I had already. This one is by Imperial 1986. It's from their Universal Monsters line, and I think it's perfect because it really looks like the Mummy from the video games. It's your stereotypical on-the-nose kind of mummy, the kind of mummy I drew in countless notebooks as a kid. It doesn't go towards the Boris Karloff version of the Mummy. He's fully wrapped, he scales perfectly with these figures, and I think it's great. If you're going to have a mummy in your Castlevania shelf, I kind of think this is the route to go, in my opinion. Another great recommendation from the Inner Demon podcast. I was like, hey, you pointed me in the right direction for the werewolf. What about a merman? And he pointed me to the Ultimate Lizard from the Spider-Man line by Toy Biz 2004. These are relatively cheap, found it on eBay, and I think it looks pretty spot on. And I needed a merman in this Castlevania shelf, in this bestiary, because those cheeky little bastards always gave me trouble unless you have the stopwatch. It really helps you out, but a great recommendation, great figure to represent the merman in my opinion. For all the different knights that you face while fighting your way through Dracula's castle, I went with the Dark Templar Knight from Four Horsemen Studios. It's an awesome figure. I bought it with the idea in my mind that he would be added to my Castlevania shelf, but you have a lot of options with Four Horsemen Studios to add to your Castlevania shelf. I chose this one particularly just because he looks so damn cool. Got a lot of cool accessories, and one of two Four Horsemen Studios figures on my Castlevania shelf. The second being the Red Skeleton from the Mask of Red Death by Four Horsemen, their Figure Obscura line. Listen, those pesky, reanimating red skeletons that I first remember from Rondo of Blood, I think they made appearances in other games, it's perfect for that. And it also comes with this great clock that fits in with the scenery and the set pieces from Castlevania. It's a great figure. The Figure Obscura line is top-notch, and this figure was a no-brainer for me. While browsing CreatureReplica.com, I came across this amazing Yeti figure, and I believe you fight the Yeti in Dawn of Sorrow and Order of Ecclesia, the DS games, and those two are really good games as well, but you know, that's the beauty of doing something like this, is you can start to use your own imagination. Even if it wasn't from the game, I probably would have added it anyway, just because you can take your own liberties, and I do that a lot with my figures. If you've watched some of my videos, expanding different toy lines and doing customs, but this one was kind of a no-brainer. A really cool figure anyway, and he fits in great with the rest of the Castlevania monsters and creatures. And taking my own liberties, I added this zombie babe from the Van Helsing figure set from Diamond Select Toys. It just adds some good atmosphere and set piece. There's a Van Helsing figure. And you know, that's the beauty of it. You can really take your liberty and start adding some other things as well. And I've kind of did that with the Black Star figures from the 80s. They fit in great. And I don't know where that arm came from or where the skull and black cat came from, but they just add a little bit more atmosphere and fun to the overall look of the Castlevania shelf. And there's a lot of things that I could pull from. I mean, I've got lots of different toys from a lot of different lines that would work. Some Swamp Thing monsters or creatures would work in this Castlevania shelf as well. There's a lot of things you could do if you really start to push your imagination. You never know who may show up in Castlevania's castle. Maybe a blood red xenomorph to take on one of the Belmonts, but who knows? That's the beauty of it all, and I really look forward to adding more to my bestiary, my Castlevania shelf. So that's it as of now. I'm calling this my bestiary, whatever, however you pronounce it, Volume 1. I plan on adding to it, though space is quite limited right now, as you can see. But viewers, tell me, do you have your own Castlevania shelf? Or is there a video game that didn't quite have the figures or merchandise released for it that you are quite fond of and adore, and you've kind of come up with your own ideas? I would love to know. And if you haven't already, it's your first time here, I would love it if you hit subscribe, hit the notification button. That way you stay up to date with everything I do here. I try to post at least one video, if not 2 videos a month, and if it has to do with movies, video games, music from time to time, and all the merchandise we like to collect for that, I'll probably end up talking about it here on my channel. I've had a lot of fun putting together this shelf, representing one of my favorite series of video games of all time. I look forward to adding to it. If you have any recommendations on figures you would like to see added to my Castlevania shelf, drop me a line. I love the conversation with my viewers, and it's like I always say at the end of my videos, let's be kind as we rewind and fast forward through time. Thank you so much for stopping by 2 Day Rentals.